The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to preach deliverance to the captives, and recovering of sight to the blind, to set at liberty them that are bruised. I've been assigned a task that I believe I was given to me before the foundation of the world. It is through the twists and turns, the ups and downs, the highs, and definitely the lows of my very own life that this task began to take shape and form. As I sat in a prison cell in 2015, I thought deeply about the decisions and the choices that I made that resulted in my being incarcerated. If I could be honest, I was incarcerated long before I ever was placed behind bars. I was incarcerated, bound by my fears and insecurities. I was incarcerated, bound by what I call playground experiences. Those experiences and circumstances that occurred during adolescence that impacted me negatively, causing me trauma, internal wounds, and hurt. It was the names I was called. It was the rejection I felt. It was the absence of my father that I internalized and concluded that something was wrong with me, that I simply was not good enough. Furthermore, these thoughts, ideas, and assumptions about self followed me as I grew into a teenager and then into a man. And as a man, I realized I did not know who I was, and I buried those fears, insecurities, and playground experiences in an excessive lifestyle of partying, late nights, drinking, and using drugs. I was incarcerated. And as I sat in prison, confined to what was to be my hell, I pushed through. I prevailed. It was there that I began to reflect upon my life, and I realized I did not know who I was. But it was also there in the prison cell that like the prodigal son, I came to myself. I began to read the Bible. I began to write. I began digging deeply, asking questions to myself and to God. I pondered upon the decisions I made and asked myself why. I gave God my fears, hurt, and insecurities. I questioned God about life and purpose. More importantly, I questioned myself and God about who I was, and I began to think about and question who I wanted to be. What was the type of man I wanted to be? How was I going to show up in the world? And as my answers to my questions became a part of my reality, I discovered beneath the hurt, pain, insecurities, fears, feelings of rejection, and abandonment, who I was. I came to myself and I was liberated. This liberation came with a responsibility for me to carry the message in the gospel of hope and freedom. James Cone states, liberation theology is at the heart of the gospel and is the task of setting captives free of bondage. Thus, a liberation of theology for the incarcerated speaks to those within the prison system through the message of the gospel to establish identity with the goal of those who are incarcerated coming to themselves, discovering exactly who God intended for them to be, and therefore being set free, being liberated. Indeed, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to preach deliverance to the captives, and recovering of sight to the blind, to set at liberty them that are bruised. This is a theology of liberation for the incarcerated.